Viewers, you're watching our rolling coverage of the latest developments that are unfolding in the Middle East. Last 15 hours have changed the region quite literally. And as we speak, more updates are coming in. A more dramatic shift in the posture, the diplomatic and economic posture of Iran going forward. Updates coming in that the Iranian parliament has approved closure of the Hormuz Strait. Now that could potentially block access to oil routes. The Iranian parliament has approved, and this measure needs to finally be approved by the Security Committee and the key committee that will finally decide. But if this measure does come through, it could have a huge impact on global shipping and trade lines. Let me get in my colleague Vishal Vivek to take you through why this single decision could actually be unprecedented and have catastrophic economic consequences from Iran's side. Go ahead, Vishal, decode that for us.
So to start off, Gaurie, over 20% of daily oil consumption for the world depends on this tiny stretch, which is just about 25 kilometers wide. So that gives you a scale of damage that the closure of the Strait of Hormuz can do on the rest of the world. And coming back to India, India's imports, the 2/3 of oil imports that come into India also depend on this tiny stretch. So this Strait of Hormuz stretches from Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman. This tiny stretch gives space to many Gulf countries' oil exports, such as Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman. So these countries are heavy exporters of oil. So if this stretch is closed, this can drive prices up. It can have effect on global economy. It can drive inflation up. So you name it, there could be a cascading effect on almost all corners of the world, on India as well, as we've been talking about. So the closure, if it goes through, right now the Iranian parliament has just voted to give a go-ahead for the closure of this stretch. That will have to be seen if Iran actually goes through with the plan, because Iran had been threatening to close this stretch for the last 48 hours, and now we seem to be on the verge of that.
Okay, the Supreme National Security Council in Iran needs to finalize this decision. Thank you, Vishal, for putting that in greater detail for our viewers. If you're tuning in right now, as we're putting out, the Strait of Hormuz is that narrow stretch of land that's critical for global shipping and trading routes. Oil routes go through this route, and which is why it is so critical. Till now, on several occasions in the past, Iran has threatened to block this Hormuz Strait, hasn't done so till now. Let's quickly get in an important voice to talk more on this. In fact, Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad, who's the former ambassador of India to Saudi Arabia, joins us on the broadcast. So thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. Let me start by asking you this breaking news that's coming in, something that could have a massive escalation going forward in terms of how Iran's taking a harder posture on this. Talk to us about the possibility of Iran actually coming good on this threat. The fact that the parliament has already voted in. Final decision is still awaited, but it looks like if it does happen, it could be a serious escalation.
You would be very surprised if there is a formal decision of the Iranian government to close Hormuz. It makes no sense at all. Iran does not have the capacity to close the Hormuz. There is a presence of a very powerful American naval presence in the region. I think that it also makes no sense at all. The only thing that it will do is that Iran will be further hammered in terms of American firepower without achieving anything on the ground. It also hurts Iran's own interests. Many of us have pointed out several times that Iran's oil exports also go through the Gulf. Go through the Hormuz. And as you know, though there are sanctions on Iran's oil exports, it has been actually exporting quite a bit, particularly to China and several other countries. So I would not be particularly carried away. If it is done, it would be an extremely foolhardy decision. And I'm not sure that the Iranians are at this stage that foolhardy.
That's an important point. And also, this is not something that only impacts Iran. All the other oil-producing countries also will be directly impacted. So all those calls of brotherhood that have come in the last 12 hours or so, some of those positions and statements will see a dramatic shift, because all Strait of Hormuz being shut impacts their shipping lines as well, their oil routes as well.
Absolutely right. A parliamentary decision, the decision of a resolution of the Majlis, it has very little sanctity. The decisions are taken by the government and it is finally approved by the supreme leader. I am a very serious skeptic in this regard. There's a lot of posturing going on. I don't take it seriously.
Okay, so that's an important point, that this could just be posturing more than anything else, that this is what Iran is capable of if drawn further into a corner. That could be the kind of posturing. Then, sir, let me then take you towards some of the other developments that have taken place in the last 12 hours or so, and the India impact of this. First, how do you see this escalating from here on, Ambassador Ahmad, as someone who understands this region so very well? Talk to us, explain to us, how do you see this region now getting impacted permanently, the shift in the dynamics after what has happened in the last 12 hours or so?
I think the prospect of American participation has been building up for some time. Despite suggestions from Washington that Trump is not enthusiastic, that he is not keen to get involved in a Middle East war, that he wants to have time and give diplomacy a chance, all the signals now that we go back make it very clear to me that the Americans had decided to participate in this assault fairly early. If you look at the kind of dialogue they had with the Iranians, 4 rounds of dialogue went actually very well. In the 5th round in Rome, for the first time, the Americans put forward absolutely unacceptable conditions. They said there has to be zero enrichment, that there has to be restriction on the missiles, ballistic missiles, and that Iran should stop supporting its various proxies in the region. Which country in the world is ever going to accept these kind of humiliating conditions? So I think at that stage, it was already signaled that the Americans were no longer interested in dialogue. Even now, when the Americans talk of dialogue, they are not serious about it. They actually had opted for a military option. If you look at Donald Trump, many of us know him as a very egoistical individual. He postures on the world stage. He likes to project himself as a great leader, even a military commander. I think he was torn between, at some stage he may have been torn between 2 alluring options. Number 1, to be the great diplomat and statesman and actually have a deal with the Iranians, or become the great Julius Caesar, the great warrior who finally hammers the Iranians and then makes them submit. I think the warrior in him finally was successful, and I think this is what we have seen as of now.
All right. Sir, which brings me to ask you about Indian interests. The Indian interests in the region are diverse and significant, whether we talk about our huge diaspora presence, whether we talk about the Chabahar port, whether we talk about our deep military engagement and military cooperation with Israel. So we have diverse and deep interests in that entire region. Talk to us, explain to us, how do you see India's interests going forward in a very volatile situation that we are seeing in the Middle East?
See, India has crucial and abiding interests in a stable West Asia. Everything that is important for our well-being, our political and economic well-being, and our cultural and social well-being is connected with stability in the region. My concern as of now is very specific concern that if Iran were to attack any American targets, the Americans are waiting for that and they will launch a massive assault upon Iran. And then you could see the expansion of the conflict. There could be collateral damage or deliberate assault on various facilities in the region. You know that petroleum and gas are extremely volatile. Now that is what worries me most of all, that if this conflagration expands, then we are going to see very serious difficulties. If India has a genuine interest in stability in the region, we should be counseling both Tel Aviv and Tehran to now become restrained. I know it is much too late. We should have been active much earlier. But of course, I also would admit that neither Tel Aviv nor Washington was really interested. There is a bloodlust that is agitating their leaders and pushing them forward, the kind of bloodlust that we have not seen in recent years. But even now, I would agitate this point to you that India must convey very strongly and publicly that, look, far too many interests are involved. We should also not forget we have 9 million people living in the Gulf.
Absolutely.
if there is a further expansion of hostilities, many of them could become martyred. And I don't think that that is acceptable to us. So I think this is where we must be speaking up loudly and clearly. Routine diplomatic statements become meaningless when you have such high stakes in the region.
Indeed, extraordinary circumstances, high stakes India has, and which is why maybe the diplomatic positioning, as you're talking about, needs to be probably more than what it is. Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad, thanks so much for speaking to NDTV. On that note, let me now quickly rope in some of the other guests joining us and go back to the one story that I feel, while it is still developing, it could have huge ramifications for all stakeholders, not just those in the region, but countries far and wide will be impacted if the Strait of Hormuz story that's breaking on the bottom of your screens right now is a decision that Iran comes good on, with the parliament taking that decision. Lev Aran, who's an Israeli journalist and columnist, with us on the broadcast. We also have Hasan Zaidi from Iran, Daniel Silverberg from Washington, D.C., as well as Anjana Sankar to talk more about this. And in fact, as things stand, let me start with you, Daniel. The Iranian threat around Strait of Hormuz is something that has been said multiple times in the past when escalations have gone up. This has been the one threat that has been used. But till now, it seemed that Iran hasn't acted on it. It looks like it may just do. Daniel, how do you see the prospect of Strait of Hormuz being shut by Iran?
Well, thanks for having me. No question, you are right. This was a risk that every president in determining whether to use force against Iran has had to consider. And the risks with striking Iran for President Trump were significant. I'd like to think that he knew that. Will Iran actually follow through with this? Well, Iran has two objectives right now. One, unquestionably, is regime preservation. That is unquestionably the overarching goal of how the Iranian government is approaching its next steps. And so if closing the Straits of Hormuz will achieve that, then I think that this risk could be more realistic. However, Iran's second goal for years now has been to normalize the regime, to make it a peaceful actor in the eyes of the world. Closing the Strait of Hormuz certainly goes against that pursuit.
All right. And let me now then bring in some of, Anjana, let me bring you in there in terms of this prospect, this threat, something that has been in the air for some time. It seemed that Iran will not act on it because it is not going to just hurt American interests. It's going to hurt countries across the world, whether you talk about the oil shock, whether you talk about global trade and shipping lines being hit. Suddenly, Iran may be further isolated than what it is right now. Can it take that risk?
Thank you for having me. That's right. Currently where Iran stands, I think it stands the most isolated that it has ever been after the 1979 war with Iraq. Look at its allies, especially Russia. Iran had invested heavily into building that relationship with Russia. 9 or 10 days into the war, we have heard Russia making statements, but Russia did not move a little finger to help Iran. There's no promise of any sort of involvement, defense involvement. And this is the same Iran that helped Russia in the Ukrainian war. The Shahid drones that Russia is using to pound Ukraine is provided by Iran. So that is where Russia stands. And from China also, though it has strategic interests in whether it is the Belt and Road Initiative or other trade relations with Iran, China is also playing it very safely. It hasn't made any promise. So definitely Iran stands isolated, especially look at the situation of the proxies. Hezbollah hasn't said anything. We haven't heard from Hezbollah ever since this conflict started, even after the US attack. We've heard from Houthis that made a statement today that there will be retaliation on the US ships in the Red Sea. But we are not sure how much of this militia is capable of making a difference or helping Iran. So this latest decision by Iran is definitely on the back foot now. And if it goes ahead with the decision to close the Hormuz, it is, as you said, it's going to further alienate itself, because that is a decision that is not just going to affect the US or Israel. Its allies, the newly built friendships that it has in the Gulf countries, whether it's Saudi Arabia or UAE or the other allies
Indeed.
that it can count on, it is going to have a cascading
Anjana, let me
effect
ask
to
that.
all of their
Hold your thought
economies.
there. Hold your thought. Let me ask that question to Hasan Zaidi, which is that if you're talking about Strait of Hormuz, you are talking about 20% of the world's oil production. You're talking about 100 ships a day. 50 of them are actually oil tankers. Not all oil tankers are that of Iran. There are also Saudi Arabia, there are of UAE, then there are global LNG supplies. Why would Iran want to do something so dramatic which could alienate it amongst its neighbors itself, with whom it has been able to get some solidarity calls till now?
Thank you for having me. Actually, Iran has many other options as well. And it was just aired on the Iranian media and especially on the social media. And just I want to mention that it wasn't presented to the main parliament, but to some of the committees of the parliament. And they have decided that it's one of the options. Other options which Iran has, because there are many US bases around Iran, Iran can easily hit them. But the psychological consequences is hitting everybody at the moment. And like the oil price will go up tomorrow morning, you can check it out. And even Iran hasn't done a thing. And it will even have consequences for even it's Iran's own, we can say, allies. Mm-hmm. But maybe it will do something with other people playing in the region, and maybe they will think twice about it, that they should stop the US from doing further like destabilizing actions in the region, so the Iranians can take a time to have a breath and do other things. And Iran has enough power to even close this strait.
No, that's not the point. The point is not that Iran can close this strait. The point is, if it does this, it is not just impacting America, it is impacting everybody, all interests, including itself. Whether you talk about oil, whether you talk about LNG, you talk about people, the countries that are going to be buying this, that includes India, China, one of the largest importers. You're talking about oil-producing countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, all getting impacted. So as I said, this is not just about Iran flexing its muscles to show what all it can do to hurt American interests. This impacts the entire world. And Mr. Aran, let me ask you this question in terms of this threat that has come in. It's still a threat because it is the Iranian parliament that has put it, not the Security Council. In your assessment, do you see this as something that Iran is actually going to act on, or could this just be some diplomatic tough posturing?
The same way that Asim Munir is the real leader of Pakistan and not the prime minister or the president, in the same way the parliament are like a bunch of nobodies as far as Israel is concerned. Iran was humiliated. Also, neighbors of Iran in the Emirates, they're like celebrating the humiliation of Iran. So as far as Israelis are concerned, the Iranians are bluffing. They will do nothing in Hormuz. It will be a self-goal. They know it, and it is only for propaganda. They will never do it.
Daniel, now as things stand, while this could be one of the options that Iran is looking at, or at least it wants to ensure that tough posturing, how do you see the next 24 to 48 hours in the region in the backdrop of some of the commentary that came in from Pentagon, from Pete Hegseth, explaining that while regime change may not be and is not their goal, there are still very clear concerns about how they view Iran going forward?
Sure. And I confess to a degree of modesty here that I don't know exactly how the Iranian regime thinks. And frankly, after almost 20 years in the national security business, I think very few people understand how the regime is thinking about this kind of development. What I do know is what's happening in Washington. And one of the predominant concerns that has emerged both among Republicans and Democrats is that the risks, the potential unintended consequences of these strikes have not been entirely thought out. You saw Democrats almost uniformly condemn these strikes, and Republicans respond in a predictable fashion. The MAGA isolationists voicing concerns, the more hawkish Republicans saying this is great. Personally, my view is there are any number of risks for Washington doing this. The Strait of Hormuz being the large one, the attack on proxies, as one of my colleagues just mentioned. But this might have actually worked. President Trump has had two options for months now: diplomacy and military force. And we're in a very different position right now than we were in 2015, when Iran has no air defenses. Iran's ability to strike back is severely curtailed. So I don't want to jump on the bandwagon saying this is incredible, we know it worked. We don't know if it worked just yet. Even the chairman of the Joint Chiefs has walked back Trump's initial strong-worded statement that this was an unmitigated success. There is a chance that this could go totally south, but there's also a chance it might have worked. And I think American policymakers need to be open to that possibility. We'll know in the next few days how much damage was actually done.
Daniel, stay with us because I want to now play out some of those sound bites, that extremely important press conference by Pete Hegseth as well as the Joint Chief of Staff. Let's listen in to some of the comments that they made, the clarifications that they put forth, and how they feel a large part of their mission has been achieved. I want to play out some of those sound bites.
Last night, on President Trump's orders, U.S. Central Command conducted a precision strike in the middle of the night against 3 nuclear facilities in Iran: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan, in order to destroy or severely degrade Iran's nuclear program. And as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs will demonstrate, it was an incredible and overwhelming success. We devastated the Iranian nuclear program, but it's worth noting the operation did not target Iranian troops or the Iranian people. Thanks to President Trump's bold and visionary leadership and his commitment to peace through strength, Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. This is a plan that took months and weeks of positioning and preparation so that we could be ready when the President of the United States called. It took a great deal of precision. It involved misdirection and the highest of operational security. Our B-2s went in and out of downtown Tehran, of these nuclear sites, in and out and back without the world knowing at all. A strike that included the longest B-2 Spirit bomber mission since 2001 and the first operational employment of the MOP, a massive ordnance penetrator. The mission demonstrated to the world the level of joint and allied integration that speak to the strength of our alliance and our joint forces.
All right, that of course was some of the commentary that came in from the Defense Secretary after these attacks have changed the entire Middle East. And since then, there has been attacks, retaliatory attacks, and now the latest measure that Iran is threatening to pull that could actually have huge ramifications for the entire world economy is that it wants to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. It hasn't done so till now, but if it does act on that threat, that could have very serious consequences. Let me now focus also on how this is likely to impact India, because that's extremely important, and how this is going to impact Indian interests. Anjana, India does have a very large exposure to this region, first and foremost because it is one of the largest importers of both oil as well as LNG, and about 1/5 of the world's both oil and energy supplies pass through this strait. So we have direct and deep interest in ensuring that this Strait of Hormuz doesn't close, remains open, and our economic impact is cushioned.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, I think in this, as I mentioned, everybody's interest, everybody's economy is at stake. The world economy is at stake. So in the coming days, last 2 days, what we've heard from Iran is that combat posture, that they will retaliate if US gets involved. But today, I think Iran has proved that it was not just rhetoric, they have done it. Immediately after the US got directly involved, we have seen the kind of impact that cities in Israel took. They have fired around 40 ballistic missiles into Tel Aviv, and then also now Parliament passing them. So our only hope now is that Iran's allies, though they are not interested at this point, not to have their skin in the game, they will be able to placate Iran to not to close this Strait of Hormuz and have this massive economic impact to all of these countries.
Lev Aran,
I think in the coming days, how much we could... Yes.
Okay, Lev Aran, how much do you think Iran has the leverage here when it comes to Strait of Hormuz?
Israelis believe that Iran is bluffing. Capabilities of Iran are less and less with every day. And also, most of the Indians who live in Bahrain or in the Emirates, they live in countries that hate Iran, and Iranians know it. As far as Israelis are concerned, Iran will have to go back to Oman to negotiation table with the Americans, and then the Americans will go to Israel and tell Israel, okay, we need to stop the war. And Israel cannot walk over Trump's red lines. So once Iran goes back to Oman in a most modest and humble way, this war will finish, and Israel knows it, Iran knows it, America knows it.
Right, Hasan Zaidi, let me give you the final word here, so to say, because I want to be, at the end of the day, this is something that is going to impact Iran as well. And also, as I said, I want to focus on Indian interests with regards to this kind of a decision. In the backdrop of a phone call that took place between Iranian president who dialed Prime Minister Modi a couple of hours back, this kind of a decision is going to have very serious economic repercussions for India as well. And New Delhi will not be in a position to insulate itself from this kind of an oil shock.
First of all, Iran has a very good relation with India and Indians. There is a large diaspora of Indians living inside Iran or studying in Iran, living here for developing their own businesses in Iran. So that's a matter of concern for every Indian if Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz. But at the moment, in my opinion, Iran is just playing a psychological game. So it can raise the price of the oil, and it will definitely benefit itself. But the rest of the region, yes, Iran had mentioned several times that if Iranian oil is not going to be exported, then nobody's oil will be exported as well. So we're not in that position at the moment. And it seems that Iran, Iran is trying to play a game and pressurize the US for its further actions. Maybe it will take after Iran's second step. So it's one of the options which Iran has. And even Mr. Arakchi, Iran's foreign minister, has said that today, he said that we have every option on table, and I will not disclose what we are going to do against the US interests.
All right. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining me, because at the end of the day, there's only one thing that one can say, that while Mr. Zaidi may think that this is an act against America, this is an act against the world economy. And world leaders will come out in asking Iran to reconsider, because this will have huge ramifications of the world economy and also Iran itself, which will be further isolated.